should all be put forward to the public. But I want the panel to recognize, I hope they recognize, that we now have an election year. And to keep it very simple, let's just make space an issue. We have a lot of good ideas, just at this panel, not to mention out there. Why don't we just get together and make it an issue?
Yes.
The only problem with that strategy is if it becomes an issue, it becomes a target as well. And there are many people who don't make the connections.
We're a target now. At least when you're going to be a target in the future, you'll know where they're shooting you from.
Well, I think the fundamental issue that perhaps can be made is, are we going to accept or reject American decline? That's what it boils down to. I'm just old enough to remember Sputnik. Okay, I was 5 when Sputnik flew, and it's the first major world event that I can remember from my own direct experience. And I know how we responded to Sputnik. I saw it. Okay, and we did not just say, oh well, yeah, we had a good run, but there they go. The Russians will just be, no, we said we're going to rise to the challenge. And frankly, there's a great sense among the American public right now that the political establishment is accepting American decline when the American public do not wish to accept it at all. Okay, and there's almost a sense of betrayal among people. And I think that politicians, if they're concerned about their prospects, would do well to address this issue. And this is one important aspect. The issue of Sputnik was the banner, and how we responded to it of, is this the nation of the future, or are the Soviets the nature of the future? It was the banner for that. Okay, and the space program remains the banner for that question. Okay? And let me tell you, I was in Leningrad when we landed on it. And, all the Russians I knew came up to me, yes. Just that. They got the message, and they really did get the message. And it said something, and it said something to ourselves. And right now, this nation has to say something to itself that it is not the nation of the past.
Yes.
This gentleman, we have to move on. I want to take.
Only 30 seconds. Bob, you just gave me the Republican platform space. Now can we at least get this to Democrats?
I hope both parties adopt this platform. Okay.
So I just wanted to say that I found Dr. Hubbard's slide presentation, one material in there especially helpful, and I want to know if there's a way to get a copy of it. Is it online?
I think that would go for all of the presentations.
Yeah, we can, PDF posted, PDF site. We put it on the Planetary Society site.
Is that where I should go to look for it?
Yeah.
I had a question.
Planetary Society, planetary.org.
Right, we'll post it.
I had a question to kind of come back to priorities, maybe in a little different way, because it's really hard in this environment to see where the budget's really going to fall at. So the level of uncertainty is extremely high, making it difficult to make long-term commitments. But if you just look at it from a balanced perspective, right now, if my numbers are roughly correct, I believe, NASA spends about 30% of its budget on science, probably 45% on human spaceflight, and the remaining quarter on aeronautics and the rest of the infrastructure. Do you think that's the right balance? And if not, where do you think the balance should be? So you have 30 in science, 45 in human, and the rest kind of cats and dogs. Is that the right balance? Recognizing we don't know exactly where the top line is going to be.
Can I jump in on that question too? Can you also address whether or not NASA's overstaffed? I've heard some grumbling among some circles that with the close down of the shuttle, a lot of contractors were laid off, but there are a lot of people over at NASA that are now doing things that they shouldn't be. I mean, should there be a right sizing of NASA at this point in time now that the shuttle is shut down?
Well, let me just.
Let me deal with that question first. And this comes up often. I used to be a NASA Senate director. The number of civil servants, which are the core staff, is something around 18,000 people. The largest chunk of NASA's money is passed through. More than 80% of NASA's money goes out to the, well, fill in the blank, the big aerospace corporations of the world. There have been attempts, numerous attempts over the last 50 years to restructure NASA, and what has happened is all politics is local. And so there has really been very little success in restructuring the centers to any great degree. The metering of the internal workforce is generally through the contractors. Again, the big chunk of money goes to the outside world, and that's where you have to look at what are those contracts with major aerospace corporations are returning, what you think is a good investment. Bill, I don't, 30% doesn't sound right, so maybe I'll.
I had 5 billion out of 17.
Because I remember Lynn Fisk, was always saying, 20% is a good number, so maybe I'll.
Right now, it's 5 billion, the top line is, 17, 18. So it's probably, look, I'm rounding up, so it's probably in the high 20s, 28. I mean, SMD is certainly, the request is 5 point something.
Scott, the hard part of answering that question and micromanaging the interior balance of NASA is that we only have the experience of working at this 20% level in terms of the science fraction. And that's been a spectacular experience. It's worked really well. And from my own experience from proposing NASA missions, that's also the number, 15, 20% for scientific analysis. And it costs you 85% of the budget to build the thing and launch it and fly it and land it. So maybe it's the right number. It's a number that has historically worked for the agency and yielded spectacular scientific results. It would be an experiment to try a higher or lower number, and that would be a risky experiment potentially.
Okay. John Logston was going to.
Just the 20% number was science, space science. When you put earth science on it, it's probably up to 30.
Why don't we take this gentleman's question?
Hi, I'm Chuck Devine. I'm currently not involved with the leadership of any organization, although I can make a really wicked case that I should be the executive director of the Maryland Aerospace Association. I got involved with what's called the STEM problem back in 2006 when I walked into a meeting at the Governor's Workforce Investment Board in Maryland, which is addressing STEM issues, among other things. One of the things I learned while I was leading a committee to create a Maryland Aerospace Association was reasons why young people are turning away from science and tech fields. They're turning away from science and tech fields because of management that is downright abusive and dishonest and doesn't allow people to have normal lives. This kind of thing has been going on for a while. Last weekend, I went to one of these TED conferences. I don't know what you think of them. It was an interesting day for me. Some people there had said, it's not a STEM problem, it's a STEAM problem. What's the A for? Arts. In other words, bringing in people who know how to deal with human beings, who know how to lead and this kind of stuff. And there's an art side to that. Any comments on any of this kind of thing that I've been learning about for a number of years now?
Certainly, public communication isn't hard, and we've got a bunch of people up here who truly believe in that, and believe in the power of getting the word out and bringing our constituents, taxpayers, the public, students, teachers along for these kinds of adventures. So, in that sense, I certainly think you're absolutely right.
Okay, just 2 more questions, and then we'll just have the panel each make a little closing statement. Any other questions here in the back?
I guess the prevailing thinking on Capitol Hill is that if these days is if you're not a member, if you're a member of Congress that doesn't represent an area where there's a specific facility, jobs are tied to NASA in some way, and somehow the space program doesn't really matter as much. I don't know if you agree that that's kind of what you're encountering, and I guess how did we get to this point, if it is?
Well, actually, I think they're mistaken. I have frequent occasion to speak to various audiences about the space program, in particular about the possibility of the Humans to Mars program. And it really does not matter where I am in the nation, or if I'm talking to a group that has some involvement in the space program or a group with no involvement. When I talk about the kind of space program I'd like to see, the Mars Direct, the main question I get in one form or another is, why aren't we doing this? This is the sort of thing this country ought to be doing. Weren't we supposed to go to Mars after Apollo? What happened? This is the sort of thing this country ought to be doing. This is what I just gave a talk yesterday, the day before yesterday in Milwaukee, okay, which is not a space center. I mean, this to a businessmen's organization, and that's fundamentally the reaction I got. The Congress thinks that the only reason why Americans are interested in space is because it is the jobs in their particular district. They are deeply mistaken. Okay, Americans believe in the pioneer spirit. They think this country ought to be pushing the frontier, and they think if this country is not pushing the frontier, it has ceased to be what it should be. One more question. Well, then why don't we, people can just